Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining. This is yet another edition of a every 2 week live stream that I've been doing, and I call it the Sprint Review just doing a quick intro for me. So my name is Mike Zung. I am a certified financial planner, and I am the owner of a financial planning company called Java Wealth. Quick background for me is I used to be in tech. And so now I work with people specifically that are in tech and so have equity compensation and things like that. And then this show is just all about trying to talk about stuff that this demographic cares about, right? First for today, just to introduce the topic, here, let me get this right. So today what we are going to be talking about is charitable giving. So it's definitely something that a lot of people that I talk to, that being charitable is a core value for them, right? And then whenever it comes to equity compensation perspective, then there's a lot of opportunity that's around that as well. I'm super excited to have someone who is also very much in the equity comp space. And she focuses on specifically early to mid-career women in tech, she's super active on social media and has a lot of really good stuff to say. And so I am really excited to introduce Meg Bartelt. So
hello.
Yeah, Meg, thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
Yep. So yeah, first just give a little bit of intro to yourself. And what you do, where you're located, and all that good stuff.
Yes. Evidently, I'm just the female version of you, because I also started my career in tech. So I spent 20s and early 30s in tech, primarily as a technical writer in the software industry. Then I switched to financial planning. Then about 6 years ago, started Flow Financial, which is my firm. And as you said, we focus on working with women in their early to mid-career in tech. And that excludes late career, just because we do not focus on the specifics of retirement planning.
Right.
We're very much working with women who are in that period of their lives where they are building their future, figuring out which direction to go next. And we do have a specialty in pre-IPO and IPO planning. We're a team of 3. We're virtual, even though we all live in the Pacific Northwest around Seattle.
Okay.
And we'll be 4 next Tuesday.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You're growing an empire now, huh?
Yes. Yes. Very, very slowly.
Right.
I'm thinking like Roman Empire time span in 2,000 years, we're going to be amazing.
Right. Hey, you got to start somewhere, right? Oh. All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and get into the topic. But before we start talking any sort of specifics, I have the pleasure of talking through the disclaimer first. First, just to say that this video is only general explanations and education. It's not specific tax, legal, and investment advice. And before acting on anything, then talk to your own tax, legal, or investment advisor. So there, I did my compliance stuff now. Okay, so now we can say whatever we want.
We can say anything.
Right. Go buy this.
Yeah.
Okay. Charitable giving, right? Mm-hmm. Let's see. I figure I'll start. Maybe I'll start on the personal side of it. We kind of talked about, it's like, hey, we'll talk some technical stuff, but I said maybe we would just kind of talk philosophy for a little bit first.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to turn it to you as far as, so for you, why, like, what does charitable giving mean to you, and like what's the driver for being charitable?
I think being charitable is a recognition of the luck and privilege that we've all had in some regard.
Yeah.
Your luck and privilege is different than mine, but I certainly know that I have had plenty.
Right.
And it is, I think, my sort of responsibility as a human to give back. It's sort of within my moral framework that if I experience luck and privilege, if I experience help from the universe or from other people, it is really my moral obligation to to pay that forward to other people who have not had similar.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. So, so yeah, I guess so then in your in your world, um, uh, well, let's see. Maybe I'll start talking a little bit about like because you said that you also do maybe it was before we got on air, started talking about like from the life planning perspective, right?
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
talking with clients about just kind of the how we say none of this stuff is really about money, and it's kind of like trying to find those core values, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in your experience, whenever you talk to clients,
Mhm.
then how often would you say, maybe it's just anecdotally speaking, but how often would you say that charitable giving is brought up?
Yeah. I think maybe half our clients
Hmm.
bring it up themselves
Right,
without us inquiring
right,
about it. Um, it is a topic we always broach.
okay,
Uh, some clients say, "No, I'm good. Like I believe in paying taxes.
right,
That is how I give back,"
right,
and and that's fine. Like that's not my moral framework, but that is their values or moral
right,
framework, and that's the important one. It's
right,
their
right,
money, their behavior. Um, and I would say frequently when clients bring it up themselves, they don't bring up, hey, well, they either bring it up one of two ways. Like, one, I really want to give back. I just have
hmm,
no idea how to think about it. Like,
right,
what is the
right,
sort of the intellectual framework for thinking through this?
yep,
Just nothing's there other than this impulse, this values driven impulse to give back. And then the second way it often comes up is, uh, hey, I want to talk about donor advised funds. Right?
okay.
They just jump right to the specific tactic because donor advised funds. We're getting right into this, like
Yeah,
minute
let's
4.
let's talk donor advice funds. Let's
They're so trendy and popular and sexy
uh-huh.
in the tech industry.
Yep.
Because they get all this media coverage and they offer certain tax characteristics that in the right circumstances really optimize the tax benefits of charitable giving, and that's where people start. I'm like, great, donor advised funds, possibly a great tool. Let's roll this back a few
Right.
steps, because that is
Right.
the last decision we need to
Right.
be making, the actual tactical
Right.
implementation. It all starts with, we actually had to come up with a very explicit framework for talking about this with clients, because so many clients were coming to us with, I want to give, how?
Right.
Step one is who or what do you want to support? What people, what causes, what communities
Mm-hmm.
do you think deserve your support?
Right.
Start there, right?
Right.
Because that's the whole point
Right.
of charitable giving. It's the point of charitable giving is not to get tax breaks. It's to
Right.
support people and communities you think deserve it.
Yeah.
Um, so we find ourselves sort of unrolling or stepping back from, forcing clients to take a few steps back to
Mm-hmm.
start the charitable conversation where it belongs,
Right.
which is why,
Right.
who, and why.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so it sounds like, I mean, really, you can apply that logic with so many things that we are approached with, where
Mm-hmm.
people will come with specific questions on implementation stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just speaking equity compensation, and you're talking about whenever there's an IPO, right? That it's just like, hey, like, how many shares should I exercise? Like, what should I sell? It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, okay, well, I mean, there's kind of a lot that goes into that stuff. And so taking that step back to say, it's like, okay, what's important, kind of what's your current world look like, yeah, and what do you really value, and then we can eventually get to a lot of the implementation kind of stuff.
Yes, then
Right,
we can get to the numbers and the timing and all of that.
right,
But we have to start with, what kind of values do you want to see manifest in this
right,
world? And what do you want your life to look like in the near
right.
term and the long term?
Right, yeah. Especially in getting to charitable giving specifically, it's especially with that because like you said, there's not a you're not going to financially get ahead by giving money away, right?
Right.
Talking about the tax benefits and everything like that, it's like you're still, in your own personal net worth, that's like you're going to go negative from this action, right? But that's just strictly from the numbers perspective. But what it comes down to is, that personal value and the personal, kind of relationship you have with the rest of the world and charities and everything to it's like that's the driver for it, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So cool. I guess maybe just because you kind of started talking about where people come to you. So okay, I'll be a client and I say, hey,
Sure.
I'm coming to you, and it's like I'm really passionate about like giving to these certain charities.
Great.
So it's like what should I do? I'm kind of paralyzed right now. So how
Awesome.
do I make this happen?
So you're coming to me more prepared than most clients are, because you actually already have the causes and the charities picked out.
Okay. Then maybe say it's like I feel like I should give, but I don't know like who to give to. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
taking
So
a step back now.
that would be more typical, right?
Yep.
So then we have to prompt or guide a conversation with the clients about, look, before we start clicking any buttons, giving away any dollars, we have to, or you have to get clear on what values you're trying to support here. What's important to you? Does it have to do with, supporting equity in a certain industry, or, the prison industrial complex, or children, or the environment? What are these causes? And then find some charities, right? You don't have to get it right the first time.
Right.
Pick a charity or two you can change at any moment, right? There is this notion, and not just with charitable giving, but with all aspects of finances, it seems like people put this huge burden on themselves that they have to get it right from the beginning. It's like, no, this is going to be an iterative process. Actually, one of my friends and fellow planner, Zach Teutsch, who runs Values Added Finances. I always forget what the last word is. But he sort of specializes in philanthropy. And one of the things he says is philanthropy is a skill. And as such, you have to spend time developing that skill.
Right.
And one of the ways you can do that is start by giving away a little bit of money. See how it feels. If you give to this charity, you get inundated with 400 pounds of mail every year asking you for more money.
Right.
Maybe you don't want that charity, something like that. But it is something that, you can just start small and build from there, because it is a skill that you have to develop.
Right.
Okay, so that is a conversation that hopefully our work with clients overall will help them get clearer on their values and which charities might be the sort of most effectively supporting those values.
Right.
The second question in our framework is, okay, how much? And oftentimes people sometimes do come to us with, all right, really want to give to charity, have a good enough idea about sort of the causes we want to, but how much do I give? I'm 30 years old. I don't know how much to give. And it's a totally legit question, right? If you were 98 years old and you had $1 million to your name, I'd say it's a lot safer to give away more money, right? Because your time horizon's pretty short at that point, right? But if you're 30, you've got 7 decades of living ahead of you.
Yep.
I cannot tell you how much money you need to survive those remaining 7 decades. Therefore, I can't tell you a dollar amount that is safe to give away now. So then in a way, it's the same thing as like saving to your 401k or savings for retirement. It's like when you're 30, the best we can do really is rules of thumb.
Right.
Save 10% of your income, save 15% of your income. And as you get closer to that goal, then we can start getting more accurate in our calculations. But when a goal is decades away, like rules of thumb are the best we can do. And anyone who's like rolling out decimal point precision to this stuff is lying to you.
Right.
So when it comes to how much money can I give away, the kinds of rules of thumb we propose to clients are, okay, how about just a percentage of income, right? In a lot of religious circles, you do a 10% tithe.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
for all I know, 10% actually has some sort of like biblical origin. I
Right.
don't know. But it can just be arbitrary, right? Maybe you give away 5% in your first year. Maybe you give away 1% of your income.
Right.
Start somewhere, and it's a reasonable but arbitrary rule to use to start giving away money, where you don't have to always think, like, should I give more? Should I give less? Give away 1%. Maybe next year adjust it up to 2%. In my world, when I started sort of putting a more rigorous structure around our charitable giving, I chose 10%. And again, sort of arbitrary, but it's like, oh, if it's good enough for the Bible, good enough for me. So there's a percentage of income rubric you could use. There's also a percentage of net worth. Maybe you give away 1% of your liquid net worth every year.
Right.
Again, arbitrary but reasonable. And then there's also sort of windfall-based rules of thumb, super helpful around like tender offers or IPOs or other goings public. You could decide ahead of time, I'm going to give away X% of the wealth I get from this windfall.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not an ongoing thing. I mean, you'd be lucky if you did get a windfall every year. But usually that is a one-time event that doesn't solve your sort of charitable giving calculations for the rest of your life. But it does put some structure around what is probably the biggest financial event in your life.
Right.
And so these, and then I think the fourth rubric we talk about with clients is, and this is actually inspired by a client who said, well, I think I should donate to charity what I pay in rent. And, she lives in New York City, so rent it's a lot of money. But for her, there was some sort of almost like moral equivalence there. So I thought, oh, that's really good. Again, it's arbitrary, but maybe you tie your charitable giving to something in your life, maybe even sort of like the luxuries in your life. For every dollar I spend that's not necessary, or every dollar I spend on travel, I'm going to give $1 to charity.
Yeah. That I've never heard that one. That's an interesting way, and just from a psychological perspective, I can completely see how that would work, right? It almost reminds me of the I don't know, like the Tom's shoes kind of thing or something, where it's just like, oh yeah, hey, I'm going to buy this, and with part of this, like whether it's part of my personal purchase or that I'm just going to match that in giving, that it drives the charity in some way, right?
It's very much a virtuous reinforcement of whatever spending you're doing. For me, it just comes down to find a framework or a calculation that you don't have to think about all the time. You calculate the number in this very simple calculation, and then you're done.
Right. So it's not leaving it to how charitable do I feel this month, right? Like, what do I feel like I should do this month?
Yes, and then this is related, but my husband recently said something like, man, I am so glad I am married to my wife because she has this charitable plan in place. When he receives the sort of endless list of calls from charities asking for contributions, he can say, love the cause. We have already committed all of our charitable dollars for this year. So
sorry, we have a written plan.
Right. And that's just nice, because it's the fewer decisions you have to make, the less exhausting your life is. And if you've made your decision once about how much money you're going to give away and to whom, then the sort of endless stream of charitable requests, you can say no to all of them, without a weight on your conscience. And I think that's actually a really powerful part of having a charitable plan, is the sort of, the moral weight, the stress, the mental drain of having to make a decision about every single one of these charitable requests. That goes away.
Right. Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, and I feel like you can apply a lot of this stuff just to like just not just charitable giving, but it's
Mm.
kind of the, personal finances. Things can be really emotional and it can be really draining, but if you just automate this stuff and create a system around it, that you can lift that mental strain and the weight off to where it's just like, oh, I'm doing that. Yeah, so whether it's, just kind of going back to the tithing side, right? Which, side note, tithe, like the word tithe actually means a tenth. So
Oh, hey.
that's the yeah. So yeah, but we're getting into the Bible study now. But yeah, but it's just kind of like it's the practice of like and they call it first fruits, right? So it's like off the top, sweet my dog, off the top that it's like that comes off first, right? And then after that, then you do the rest of your stuff. So we talk in financial circles talking about paying yourself first, right? And so this is just another part of it where it's just like you give the charity first, you pay yourself through retirement savings, blah, blah, blah. And then the only stuff that you have to think about mentally is the rest that's coming home that gets into the, day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, actually, we have a client who is I'm not religious, so I don't really know how to phrase it, but she is like a practicing Christian. She goes to church and she tithes.
Yep.
And it's interesting talking with her about her charitable giving, because in her mental framework, she said, like, that 10%, that's not my money.
Yep.
Like, it might be coming through me, but it is not mine. And I was like, oh, that's actually, I can see that being a very powerful and helpful attitude to have towards it.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, we talk pretty transparently here. Like, so I go to church, I tithe, and it's very much of that. It's very much of that that mindset where really all of the money, like it's like it doesn't belong to me. Like I am the steward of this money, and so it's like I'm just put in charge of making the right decisions with it, right? But it's not like mine to possess, right? Where like it's kind of like not owed to me, I guess, So I don't know.
Well, I think whether or not you don't have to be religious to have that outlook, and I think it could be a very powerful outlook, because then it doesn't feel like a sacrifice giving it away, right? It wasn't mine to begin with, so it's not like I'm giving away that awesome family trip or a pair of boots or whatever.
Yeah. You don't want to do cost benefit analysis on your charitable giving. The opportunity cost or whatever, right? So yeah, let's see. Actually, one other question I'd be curious whenever it came to so one thing that I hear whenever people are saying like, hey, I want to give to charity, but I don't know what to give to, that there is people put the pressure on themselves of, well, but I want to know how this charity is using those dollars and how much of it is going to administrivia and everything else, and kind of wanting to get into those details. So do you ever run into anything like that?
A little bit. I will say it's not a huge thing. And I don't have any special expertise there. There are websites like Charity Navigator, which will break down for you, the percentage of their, charitable donations that are spent on actual like doing of the charity work and operations and administrative stuff. So, that's sort of the only thing I know about. Most of our clients are, in fact, when they do end up giving, it is to smaller, more local charities.
Okay, yeah.
We don't have any clients who give to things like the Red Cross or what's the one that always goes around the workplace?
United Way.
Yes, like those won't appear on the list. Right. Probably the biggest charities we get. People do give to national charities, but oftentimes like the local branches of them, like the local branches of Planned Parenthood or something like that.
Yep.
So I can't speak all that usefully to that because that's not usually that big a part of the conversation.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think what it just kind of boils down to, and what this framework does really well, is just try to take away some of the blockers of like, I know I should do this, but blah, 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 right? And so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, let's take away, like, don't worry about, all of the little details about it, and let's just come up with, just start. Just start
Yeah.
with something and just do
Yeah.
it,
Set
right?
up a recurring monthly $25 donation on your credit card
Right,
to a
right,
charity you like. Boom, done. You've broken the log jam.
right,
Maybe next month or next year you can add another $25 to a different charity or to the same charity.
right,
But oftentimes it is going from giving nothing to giving something that is this like huge
yeah,
behavioral and like psychological hurdle.
right,
Because in part because people, yes, I want to give to like the best charity. I'm not sure I can pick out what the best charity is. Like,
right,
yeah, I feel you. I want to give in the best way. Then they get caught up on tactics,
right,
which that actually, I totally empathize with I want to be sure I'm giving my money to like the best charity.
mm-hmm.
But when people get started, being tied up on tactics, I'm like, ignore it. Just completely ignore it. Put it on your damn
Right,
credit card.
right, right,
Because again, the point of this is not to improve your financial situation.
right,
It is to get money in the hands of people who are manifesting values in this world that you support.
right,
Right. So if our charitable contribution sort of framework stopped after 2 steps, first step being get clear on the values you want
mm-hmm.
to support and the charities that
Yep,
support those values. And then step 2 is figure out how much to give away.
mm-hmm.
If it stopped there and then you just stroked a check or wrote, used a credit card, cool.
Right,
Like you have a better charitable giving framework than 99% of the people out there.
right,
That third step of, okay, let's talk tactics.
uh-huh,
That's icing. That is icing on the cake.
right,
Giving the money away in any form, that is the cake. The tactics part is the icing. But I think especially in the tech world where there's like always talk of optimizing this and that,
optimization.
right? The desire or the perception that optimization is the ultimate goal of everything
Right,
becomes overwhelming, and then we never do anything. And that
right,
that's not just about charitable giving; it's about investing and saving and
right,
spending and all everything.
yeah, yep, yeah. That's it's so true with and whenever you said like the people in the tech world is like yeah, we're going to talk about optimization, right? just that's just what I mean, and I fully admit it, like that's kind of where I came from too, where it's like I want to do this, but I also want to like I want to, how do I do it to save the most on taxes and to all this stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But you're right,
Yeah.
where it all comes what it all comes down to, and really it's giving money away is as much like, yes, it's about helping the charities that you are wanting to support, that you value, but it really is as much about just your own like place of where money lies in your world, right? And it kind of takes some of the power away from like money, like kind of that money would have on you, right?
Well, see, I love that. I that's not a perspective I have ever entertained, but yeah, that the charitable giving in different ways, but is just as much about improving your life,
Right,
as it is about improving the lives of the people who will end up getting
right.
the direct benefit of that money.
Yep.
I like that. I'm gonna have to muse on that.
All right. So this might be a terrible segue, but we're talking about stop worrying about getting technical and
Yes.
all of the optimization stuff.
Let's get technical.
But if you want.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is the essence, right? Like,
right.
Once you've got the cake,
right.
Sure. Let's put some icing on.
Yep.
But like, the icing it's unnecessary, and it's the last thing you do.
Right.
But certainly our roles as financial planners are to know all those technical ins and outs so that we can do the optimization, but just not to lead with it.
Right.
Yes. So tactics, particularly relevant to the tech industry. I mean, first and foremost, I think sort of above everything else is giving away company stock instead of giving away cash.
Yep.
Assuming your company stock has actually gone up.
Right.
Which, prior to about a few months ago, the previous decade, it's like, well, of course that's what company stock does. It goes up, right? And the last few months have shown, no, sometimes it goes down. And, eventually we will have a recession and a stock market crash. And then we will definitely know that company stock goes down. And in fact, we will probably all change our perspective to, oh my God, company stock does anything but go down. It can go up 7 points. What? But giving cash is by far the easiest, right? So it comes to sort of administrative overhead, giving cash by stroking a check, by putting, dollars in the Salvation Army pail, by putting up a recurring contribution on your credit card. Easy peasy. Do that in 2 minutes. And you might get a tax benefit from it, right? Because all the dollars you contribute, you could list as an itemized contribution on your taxes. With all the tax law changes that happened with the TCMJA or whatever it was at the end of 2017, far fewer people are itemizing their deductions. And if you don't itemize, you don't get that tax benefit from charitable contributions, right?
Yeah. Actually, so real quick to that part, I actually looked up. So can you guess how many people take the standard deduction right now versus itemize?
Ooh, I think I saw this. It was like 90% of people take standard deduction now.
Yep. Yeah, 90%.
I win.
So basically, for 90% of the population, any giving that they've done technically had no bearing on their tax bill.
No tax benefits at all. Right.
Yep. Okay.
That's if you give cash, because that's the only possibility of a tax benefit when you give cash, is that you get to take an itemized deduction. Now, let's shift to company stock. And obviously I don't need to teach you this, so it feels a little weird. Like,
no, hey, I'm still this,
son, let me tell you.
I'm still this client that has just come to you and I said, hey, I want to give money away, but I don't know how to do it. So you're walking me through.
There we go. Right. So you're my client. You went through the Airbnb IPO.
Yep.
All of your RSUs vested on IPO day in late 2020. So you've got a bunch of shares of Airbnb with a cost basis of $68, right? Because that was the list price of Airbnb on IPO day, and all of your RSUs came to you at a value of $68.
Yep.
That's what the cost basis is. It's like the price at which you acquired the stock, whether you went out to the stock market and actually bought it, or your RSUs vested, or you exercised your options, or any of that. All right. So you've got all these shares of Airbnb stock at $68. It is currently worth, I don't know, I was just looking earlier this morning. In fact, it was like $176, $177.
Okay. So it's almost tripled.
Airbnb is doing very well. Oh, sorry, my video just paused.
Yeah, no, sorry.
So you've got let's just say that's $100 of gain. Right. So you have one share of Airbnb, your cost basis is 68. It's worth 170. You've got $100 of gain in there. If you sold that, you'd have to pay taxes on that $100 gain.
Yep.
And if you live in California, you're probably at like a 34%, 35% federal tax bracket, plus another 10, let's say. And actually we're talking about long-term capital gains. So it'll be like 20% long-term capital gains federal, and then another 10 for California. So we're talking 30% tax rate.
Yep.
Right. So you sell $100 gain, you have to pay $30 in taxes. It's a pretty big chunk of money you've just lost to taxes.
Right.
Now, let's say you want to give $170 to charity. You could give $170 of cash. Great. Charity gets $170. They're very happy. You get no tax benefit, right? Because you're not itemizing your deductions on your taxes. Or you give one share of Airbnb. Charity's like, great, yoink, I'm going to sell that immediately. I just got Charity thinks I just got $170. Great. And because I'm a charity, I don't have to pay taxes. So it's the exact same thing to the charity as receiving $170.
Yep.
But to you, you're not itemizing in this scenario, so you're not getting any tax benefits that way, but you just avoided having to spend $30 on taxes.
Right.
And sort of another way of thinking about it, especially if you're like, oh, but I love Airbnb stock and I want to keep it all. You could now take that $170 of cash and just buy that share back. Now, I'm not recommending this in most cases.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Most people who work at Airbnb have way too much Airbnb stock for their own sort of financial safety.
Mm-hmm.
But you could buy it back, and now you have a share of cost basis you have a share of Airbnb whose cost basis is $170.
It's $170 now, yeah.
Why do we care? Why is this a good thing? Well, let's say next year, after you hold it for a year, you sell it for $200. Well, now you've only got a $30 gain to pay taxes on.
Yeah.
Whereas if you sold that original share, you'd have 200 minus 68, which is a larger number that you'd have to pay taxes on.
Right.
So you have actually improved your tax situation by donating that share instead of donating cash.
Okay. I've never taken that next step of, after donating appreciated stock, then turning around and buying that stock again. That's interesting.
I have never done that with a client for their company stock, because literally 100% of the time with our clients, we have been trying to lessen the number of shares.
It's like this company stock takes up 80% of your net worth right now.
Yes. It's more applicable. And I do this in my own personal life where, I own Vanguard total stock, total US stock market fund.
Yep.
That's grown a lot in the last 13 years since the Great Recession. So I will donate shares of that, and then I'll just buy more behind it, because I still want it in my portfolio. But I'm just getting a little bit of tax arbitrage.
Yeah.
By doing that.
Okay. Yeah. That's it's bending my mind right now. I was like, I never really thought about doing that, but it makes complete sense. So okay.
That's a very minor thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we're still mainly just trying to give money to charity right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess maybe just a super quick recap of it is basically, as long as the stock, one, has appreciated, because I have gotten the question.
Going up in value.
Right, yeah, it's gone up. Yeah, that's right. We got to stop doing these stupid industry terms. That one, that the stock has gone up in value, because I have had the question of like, well, what if my stock has actually gone down? Should I still donate that?
Sell it and get that sweet tax write-off.
Right, yeah. So it's like, if it's gone down in value, then actually, just selling it so that you can claim the loss on your own taxes, and then you can donate whatever, the actual value of it. So, and it has to have gone up, and then it also has to be long-term. So it's something that you've owned for more than a year.
Yep.
Right. So, okay, cool. So we have that, and then we've kind of talked a little bit about, there's the standard deduction. So right now, this next year, it's a little over $25,000, right? And so it's like, if you don't, for a couple, yep. So if you don't get above that, then you're not, you're not actually getting a tax break from that perspective. Like, you're not getting that deduction on it, right?
Yep.
So let's talk. It can be donor advised fund, or it could not, right? So this idea of bunching donations or stacking them or whatever, there's a lot of different ways of talking about it. So do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it? Either way.
Oh, you can start. I've been talking a lot.
Okay. So basically the idea is that, with just, if in a normal year, the amount that you're giving, if it doesn't get above the standard deduction, then you're not actually getting a tax break. But there's a strategy of saying like, well, what if you bunched up multiple years of deductions in a single year, so that in that year, from an IRS perspective, you have broken through the ceiling of the standard deduction, and you are now getting a tax break on some of your charitable giving, like the amount that's gone over what the standard deduction is. Right. So that's a super quick way of saying like, that's what charitable bunching is, right? And then
followed by multiple years of giving nothing.
Right. Yeah. And then in these other years where you otherwise would have been giving the charity, you don't, because you've already like pre-funded this. I almost said donor advice fund. You've already given a bunch of 3 years worth in a single year, right? Yep. So okay, so then actually let's go ahead and talk a little bit about donor advice funds.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So so I have this knee-jerk negative reaction to donor advice funds, which isn't entirely deserved, because they can be very useful tools. I guess I have just gotten frustrated by how people lead with, I want to give to a donor advice fund.
Right.
As opposed to leading with, I'd like to support a charity, or I'd like to like give as much money as I can.
Right.
Because that's not always the right solution.
Right.
Donor advice funds, they introduced a new administrative layer to your life. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I get so just like mind-bogglingly frustrated by how much administrative BS I have to wade through in my life. Like, I just signed my daughter up to do extramural, intramural. There we go. Okay. Cross country as a 6th grader. And it was like a 10-page form. So that to me was just emblematic of, okay, anywhere in my life that I can simplify. Wow, I'm getting all weird here.
Yeah.
Anywhere in my life that I can keep it simple, I want to, because I do not want to be spending my time on the computer jumping through forms.
Right.
Just so like, that is not what my life should be like, and not what anyone's life should be like.
Right.
Choosing a DAF means that you are voluntarily taking on an extra layer of administrative burden. Just be aware of that. Okay.
Right.
Donor advice funds also cost money. If you're working with a financial advisor, the financial advisor could be charging a fee on the money that you have in the donor advice fund.
Yep.
Not always. We don't, but many advisors do. And I think it's totally legitimate that they do. And then the charitable foundation that owns the donor advice fund. Remember, because you, as the donor, you don't actually own that money anymore. Once you donate your money to the donor advice fund, it's not yours anymore. You can, as the title say, advise on it, but it is the charitable foundation's. It's theirs now. They can do legally whatever they want with it.
Right.
Okay, I got all ranty. Where was I going with this?
Well, here, actually, let me back up a little bit, because I don't think we actually defined what a donor advice fund was. So,
oh my God. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
So super quick, donor advice fund. The idea of it is that it's a separate account. You know, it's a separate type of account where any money that you put into the donor advice fund, from the IRS perspective, you have donated to charity. Right. And so like, the way that I say it is like, it's like your giving envelope. Like, you're just stuffing money into your giving envelope. And then from that donor advice fund, you are then, you no longer specifically own it. You've already given it to charity from the IRS perspective, but then you are advising that fund, that account, to say, hey, now give that money to this church or to this particular charity, right? Stuff like that, right? So it's like, it's kind of an intermediary step from between you and giving to the charity, like you're doing it through this donor advice fund. And then while it's in there, just super, like, I don't know if it really matters in this context, but while it's in there, you can either just leave it in cash, or you can actually invest it similar to how you could in a 401k. So,
yes.
So yes.
Awesome.
But anyway.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So that giving envelope, I love using that as a metaphor for it. So that has administrative hassle, right? Because now you have to like figure out like a brand new website and how to navigate that. And also that envelope charges you money. The charitable foundation is going to impose a fee on, a percentage-based fee on whatever money is inside that envelope. So if you put $10,000 in, you leave it as cash, every year you're going to have slightly less money because the charitable foundation that owns that envelope is taking an administrative fee from it. Right. So those are the two things that I don't think people think about enough.
Yep.
This has a cost, both in dollars and in your sanity when it comes to administrative burden. Okay. All right, so those are the negatives. What was I getting at? No,
Well,
should I shift to the positive, like where donor advised funds are actually useful?
I mean, yeah, sure. So as far as the positives go, maybe this is like a point counterpoint thing, right?
Okay.
So for like, yeah, I completely agree with all that stuff, and yeah. So full disclosure, I use a donor advised fund, and I also help clients with donor advised funds. I don't charge extra on it either. So like just like what you're saying, we'll just do quick shameless plugs. But a couple of the things that I like about it. One is, so whenever we were just talking about gifting appreciated stock, right? So one thing that can be a hassle for the charity, for the end, the target charity, is that they might not be set up to accept appreciated stock as a gift. But donor advised funds, like for example, like we use Fidelity, and they're very much set up to like, hey, you send in this form, it's donating this appreciated stock, and then they know how to handle it, and so you're kind of taking that burden off of the individual charities of like figuring out how to accept appreciated stock. Right?
Yeah. And I will say that's a great example, because there are some charities you might want to give to that simply cannot accept appreciated stock.
Right. Especially whenever you're talking about like these smaller charities that a lot of your clients are working with, right?
So you would have to go through a donor advised fund if you wanted to both get the tax benefits of donating stock,
right,
and support this charity. Yes, absolutely. That is a good use case, for donor advised funds.
And so now let's get a little bit more philosophical with we talked about this a little bit right before we went live. So there is the thing that I struggle with sometimes with donor advised funds is like, because essentially what you are doing is you are gifting, you've given money away, but the charity does not have access to it yet. It is still in your own giving envelope, right? And so I don't know if there's a question behind this, but maybe it's just a statement where it's like, I do sometimes struggle with, what does it make sense to kind of put it into this one holding area and then consistently kind of dole out some set amount, versus just like getting that money into the charity's hands as quickly as possible?
Yeah. Yeah, I do find that there is almost this psychological division. My goodness, my video is so bad. Like, it's never this bad. What is up with this?
It's getting worse. I don't know.
I'm like all pixelated.
I'll turn this into a podcast so that we don't have to worry about it.
Thank you. As long as my audio is good, it should be okay. That getting the money or the stock into the donor advised fund, that feels like this big hurdle. Like, okay, I've got the tax benefits. I've jumped through all those hoops to figure out how much and the shares and yada yada. Whew, done.
Right.
Right. That is, in fact, from a value perspective, that is a tiny fraction of the work you need to be doing. It might have administratively been a big thing.
Right.
Like, none of this work matters fundamentally until you shove that money to a charity.
Right.
But because there's so much administrative work associated with just getting the money into the donor advised fund, that people oftentimes like, okay, I'll deal with that later. When later, I don't know. I'll just deal with it later.
Yep.
So yeah, that is something to be attentive to. I think that would be my only commentary on it. This is what I see. Donor advised funds, there are many good uses for them. If you use one for those many good uses, just make sure you have a plan for actually getting that money to the causes that you think deserve them.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And one thing so it was a question that you had posed in a private Facebook group that was talking about, from trying to get the perspective of the charity, of, would you prefer, as the charity, as the recipient of this, would you prefer a lump sum that is inconsistent, or would you rather have that consistent monthly donation?
Right? Yeah, because where I was coming from with that question is there are a lot of normal people and then also a lot of advisors.
Yeah.
Those are the two
Yeah.
Who sort of default to, oh, I'll put a bunch of money in the donor advised fund, but then I'm only going to dole out a fraction of it to charities. I'm like, I'm gonna invest the rest, and grow it so that I can give more in the future, which sounds amazing. But then I started thinking, what these people are saying, these advisors and normal people are saying is, I'm going to withhold some of the money for the benefit of the charitable causes, because I'll be able to give them more in the future. And I was like, I wonder if charities actually think that's in their benefit or not. Would they rather just receive all that money this year? Or receive sort of a steady drip of it over many years? And the responses I got that I actually put credence in were from people who had had some role in running charitable organizations of some sort, endowments and yada, yada. And what their answers were primarily, ask the charities that you care about how they'd like to, how and when they'd like to receive money. And two, usually now is better. Right. And this is where I get a little hot under the collar, because I sound like an 80-year-old woman. Under the collar.
Bless their heart, but still.
When you say, I'm going to hold back some of this money so I can invest it and grow it bigger and then give it to charity later, what you are also saying, even if you might not recognize it, is, I know what's better for the charity than the charity knows what's better for itself. Because if I thought the charity knew best, I would just give all the money to the charity now and trust them to either spend it or invest it themselves. Right. But no. I think I know what's going to serve this charity best, and that's to withhold some of this money, invest it, and give them more later. And I don't think a lot of people are conscious of that, or even believe that when it's made explicit to them. But that is the effect of that decision.
Yeah. So actually, we're coming on the top of the hour. So this is actually a perfect segue into the Reddit question of the day. So yeah, this is something. This is exactly what we're talking about, but just to the extreme, right? So it's someone who's in the Reddit personal finance. So all this stuff's anonymous. They're just talking about, hey, I want to start giving. Yeah, it's like, this first part is very much of what we were saying. I want to give back at least a decent point of my earnings to highly effective charities and practice effective altruism, right? However, I have this nagging thought that donating a significant chunk, say 10% every year, would do less good than a lump sum at the end of my life. So this is not just I'm putting a donor advised fund and I'm spanning over the next few years. It's just saying, like, what if I just invest this money, and that, after I pass away, then this charity gets a big lump sum, right? So it's just saying, it doesn't make sense for me to use that to invest. It just how technical, in yielding assets and use compound interest to grow the total amount of my donations to be a much larger lump sum. So it just says, what's everyone's personal thoughts around this topic?
Right. So my personal thoughts around this topic are, to first order, as long as you're giving, fine. Like, there's need now. There's going to be need when you're dead. Cool. Like, I'm not going to get all pissy with you if you decide to give later instead of now. Giving at some point is the primary goal here. Second thing would be, if you have causes that you're interested in, specific charities, ask them. Would you be able to do your job better if you had a little bit of money each year between, for the next 70 years, if that person's a 30-year-old, or would you rather get a big bequest when I die, when I'm 100? And then believe the charity, right? Believe what the charity says.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I read that particular thing, it's just like, that's a very long time. Like, who knows if this charity is going to make it that long, especially if we're
Yeah.
talking smaller ones and if they have, talk about, charities having cash flow problems and things like that. It's like, well, yeah, if everyone that cares about the charity is waiting until they die to give them
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, that's true. Although I'm sure there'll be a sort of equivalent charity that pops up in its place.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and actually going back to something you said earlier that was new for me, which is giving to charity is equal parts about changing your relationship to money.
Right.
Right? If you were going to keep all this like designated charitable donation, but you're going to basically hoard it for the rest of your life,
Right.
that probably is not creating the kind of relationship you have to money that you want.
Right.
That's reinforcing almost a scarcity mindset. Like I have to hoard it all. I have to keep it within my control, within my grasp. Whereas if every year, if you love it, set it free sort of attitude. I wonder if that might just have a really profound effect starting right now.
Right.
On your relationship to money.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So, we talk about from the technical perspective, talking about this compound interest and stuff like that. Like, I really do believe that it can work in that reverse of like giving and kind of being more open-handed, that like that compounds in its own way too, right? Where it's just like it becomes easier and easier and you're able to do it more freely, and that money doesn't lord over you anymore. Right.
Yeah. I love that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. We might need to stop on that one.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So basically, I think overall, it's just basically, yes, there's technical stuff, but it's all about like just changing your mindset and don't overcomplicate it and just give already. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can complicate it later.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on and, kind of shooting the stuff around for a while. So I guess, yeah, I know. I was like, as I was saying it, I was like, there's no problem with actually cussing on a live stream, but whatever. Yeah. So anyway, I guess just give a quick like, where can people find you if they're wanting to learn more about you?
Yeah. You can find me personally on Twitter. Handle is Meg Bartelt, spelled just like my name.
Yeah.
MEGBARTELT. Spelled it correctly, yay. And then my firm's website is flowfp.com. Flow as in water flow, FP as in financial planning. And probably more specifically, flowfp.com/blog, which is where we've been posting for 6 years on issues that are relevant to women in those early to mid stages of their career in the tech industry.
Yep. All right. Cool. Well, hey, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, yeah. And for everybody else, thank you for joining. I'll be back in a couple weeks. We're going to be talking about what happens whenever you go through an IPO, like working through IPO day and everything. So, all right. Cool. Well, see everybody in a couple weeks. Bye.